everybody. Thank you for coming to this session, which I think, in my view, is probably one of the most urgent subjects of our time, certainly as of a few weeks ago. I'm Yasmin Alibhai-Brown. I'm a journalist and author. And I'm going to get the panel to introduce themselves. And so, starting from here, Gulwali, Passarlay, would you like to say in brief who you are?
Okay, I'm Gulwali, originally from Afghanistan, a former refugee, author of this book called The Lightless Sky, humanitarian refugee rights campaigner. And I went to Manchester Uni here, so yeah, Manchester was my hometown. And
then we have, and I'm going to say Qazi, because Qazi means judge in many of the languages in those parts of the world. Marzia, and I'm going to do this right, Babakarkhail.
Thank you.
Hail.
Yes, thank you. My name is Marzia, and hello everyone first, to be honest. My name is Marzia Babakarkhail, and I am a former judge from Afghanistan. I survived the Taliban regime, and so on two occasions they tried to kill me, because now I start to stand for the 250 judges in my country to get them out, and today is a good opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Do you want to?
Oh, yes. And also I want to play my friend, Judge, I can't say her name because of the security problem. She wants to pass her message to the people in this country and also around the world. Just a minute. قيس محترم میتونیم که بینتون شروع کنیم. Yeah. Yeah, so our friend is here, my friend Judge is here. She's in Kabul right now. She's hiding, and just I want to she be here and stand strong. Okay, please.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
I'm going to tell all my story and invite all of you for listening. I'm one of the Afghan female judges. Due to security problems, I can't tell my full name. I live in Kabul, Afghanistan, in a bad situation. I have been working more than 12 years as a judge in several courts of Kabul, Afghanistan, such as family court, commercial court, and etc. These days are going so bad because the Taliban didn't recognize us as a female judges and as a formal employment of courts. In the past, we had a very good time that we worked as a judge and helped our people. But unfortunately, the dark days are coming and our feelings are going hopeless. I study more than 18 years, but all achievements of me and my colleagues reached by zero. So facing off this situation is so hard and painful for us, especially nowadays when my parents are looking at me. When the time that I was the only supporter of my family, and now I'm at home and they feel hopeless. Now I call on all of you, please stand with us, and especially the government of United Kingdom that give a help of hand to all female judges and their families whom left behind in Afghanistan, because our hard working is no deserve to waiting for our death. I can say for second time, we are all waiting for our deaths. Thanks.
Give a big applause to this. And thank you, Marzia. Thank you so much for. Are you okay? Oh, I'm so sorry. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. Get your breath back. Would you like some water?
Fine, thank you. Thank you. So,
it just must be impossible to live with this. Jude, we all know and we all love. Say something about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm really a theatre artist and arts producer, and I just do really always believe that, just like that, actually, that you have to hear people's stories, helpfully, if possible, from them, and that changes the way we understand the world, and it changes who we want to care about, which has to be more than just our own immediate family.
And at the end of the session, we're very lucky to have Garry, who's got the most beautiful hair, I have to say, and is a poet.
Hi, my name's Garry. I was brought up in Mossad, just down the road, and I'm totally blown away by what I've just heard, to feel that we are so close to the pleas of people hiding in kitchens. It's just an honour to sit on this panel, to be honest.
Thank you all. I'm just going to start with a short introduction, if I may. On the 10th of September 2001, I'm a columnist, I'm a weekly columnist. I used to be with The Independent and now I write for I newspaper. But in The Independent, on the 10th of September 2001, think about the date, I wrote this: the US uses the Taliban, Iraq's President Saddam and others as excuses for its dangerous foreign policies. At that time, the US was doing business with Saddam Hussein, as well as the Taliban. It is responsible for extreme desolation. Girls and women are being beaten, oppressed, denied health and education, hanged and stoned for the smallest transgressions. I called on all Muslims to condemn this evil regime and for the people to act. And then the next day was the attack in America. And the security services in America and here thought that I knew something was going to happen. And I had a terrible time being seen as some kind of a deep sort of spy or something. But it was just to tell you that that was in 2001. And I feel exactly like people on this panel are, we're back into that dark time. And it took no time at all. And, you know, there are questions, lots of questions about how this was allowed to happen. How did it happen? How was there so little resistance? But that's for another day. And I wrote that piece, and I want to remember her, because sadly she's since died, because a friend of mine from Pakistan, who was one of Pakistan's greatest human rights lawyers, called Asma Jahangir, a very brave, a wonderful woman. She was in touch with me, and she asked me, we met, and she asked me, she said, what have you ever done about Pakistan? What have you ever written about what's happening to the women and girls? How can you call yourself a journalist when you've never ever written any? And you know, she was very straight with everybody she met. And she was looking, I remember her looking into my face. Her eyes were ablaze. And that is why I wrote this column. And last week I wrote another column, which I also want to share with you, because one thing we must never think is that the people of Afghanistan are weak and they crumble, because my God, there are incredibly brave, creative people, and we have some of them here. And last week, I don't know if you've seen this, but please look if you haven't. There's a hashtag, don't touch my clothes, I think it is. Yeah, you've seen it. All these wonderful women, Afghan women from all over the world, dressed in their traditional clothes, beautiful clothes, right? Embroidered with gold embroidery and mirror work and colors, just colors looking like peacocks. And these were the women the Taliban first put into those living coffins of pale blue chadors. Do you remember that? And here are these women saying, This is who we are. This is who we were. And they don't just speak for themselves. And this is the thing to remember as we listen to the speakers, that over the interim years, there was more freedom. More girls were educated. More women were able to be judges and do things and go on the media. And now imagine this. My mother used to tell me these stories about caged birds. You know, once you've caged a bird, never let it go free. Because once you've let it go free and you put it back in the cage, it will die. These women have known freedom. So it'll be that much harder for them. That much harder. And the Islam I grew up with was an Islam where you could celebrate life. In fact, Islam says you must live your life fully in this world. Okay? So my mother's generation dressed like these Afghan women. They put perfumes. They loved makeup. They could reach for whatever they wanted to be. And I know they won't be defeated. But boy, the next few years, they're going to be like those birds who were allowed to go free and come back and were put back in the cage. So I wanted to just start with that. Pay homage to the amazing people of Afghanistan. They are amazing. Now, can we start with you? Are you able to talk on?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll start with you,
Yeah,
and then we'll go around the...
Yeah. The reason I became an activist and as a judge, when I became a judge, I realized my naivety because sometimes we just want to have a status. When I saw injustice around the court, and the law always abrasive to women, and there's always the man judges or there's a problem between me and them. And I decided to build a shelter for divorced women. That time I was about 29 years old. In Afghanistan, these things in 1994 is a very big thing. And I was one of the 22 judges in Afghanistan in my time. I'm 55 years old. And so when I established this small shelter and I launched a big organization, AWASCO, Afghan Women Social and Cultural Organization, when the Taliban came the first time in Palahumri in 1997, they came in our house and they broke the door. Nine Taliban with guns, they came to just kill one female judge. So I realized they scared from female judge. They scared of my education. They scared because of my power, because I'm not like them stupid and kill people. And I stand what I believe in. Nobody can change me. And never I change my way. When I moved to Pakistan, again, I established a school for Afghan refugee because I believe in education. Without education, in polite way of education, no country can achieve anything. Again, the Taliban start warning me, sending me messages to stop my activity. And finally in Pakistan, they again hit me by car and they put me for death. Of course, I was in media, I was in BBC that time. The Taliban, however, they did wrong. I stand against them. And my mom decided I should leave the country. And I left my country. Why? Today I'm a stand for the judges because of my background, because of my bad experience I had in my life. I'm not alone, you know, I have a lot of good people around me in this network and for my campaigning. I just want to get out the judges from Afghanistan in a safe place. It's not a small campaigning, but I believe I can do it, inshallah.
Inshallah. Just a couple of follow-up questions, Marzia. What happened after those 9 people came in? How did you get away from them?
I was when they came in our house, and my dad and my family is very famous in my city. And when they came, and I just walked to the back door, you know, we call back door paskucha. I don't know what should I explain to you. We put in all the rubbish and things, and I waited for 6 hours, and they searched our house. People, they put fire in my house. Because I'm a judge, they put fire. This story was always is very famous in Pulakhumri because they took everything out from my house. Took everything. This is not my property. This is my that things. They put fire in my car, not my car, my family car, because I was a single person. I was lived with my family. How is this possible? How we call this is humanity? What I did wrong? Just I stand for divorced women. That's not really I did.
I think one of the most interesting things you said was 9 men with guns,
Yes,
and they're scared of the power of the female.
absolutely.
And that's just so important to remember, that you have to be very weak and so cowardly, right, to want to do this and to use guns to silence the voice of women. But you know, this is universal. This is universal, the kind of hatred of women. If you look at the trolling that we get, the women who are in the public space are the ones who get the death threats, the things that happen to you. I remember an elected MP in this country,
Absolutely.
a conservative elected MP called Michael Fabricant tweeted one day a few years ago that he wished he could punch me. He didn't know me, I didn't know him, he watched me on TV. He could punch me in the throat. And that was interesting. He wanted to punch me in the throat, which meant one thing, to silence the woman. You know, so these are very important. But really, for you to be this brave, were you born like this?
No.
You became like this?
Yes, no. Because, and I was in a very, conservative family, and my mom was a principal. My dad was an oil businessman, and I became socialist. They always asking me in media, how you became an activist? Really, I became a judge because I want to be a judge because being a judge is a big thing in Afghanistan. Also in the UK, around the world, being a judge is not an easy thing. So when I became a judge, I realized how naive I am, and I became an activist. I think activism was in my blood because when the Taliban is when again they back in Afghanistan, I don't know. I have no life. I'm alive, but I have no life.
Gulwali, can we have your story now? I must say, I feel very humbled by the strength and what you're telling us, the power of it. You have such power.
Thank you. It's difficult to follow, Qazi said, but the strange thing is that I look around the world and I see people living in relative peace and with security and opportunities, and I wonder why we Afghans had to suffer. Not only for the last 20 years, but for the last 45 years. My grandfather was a refugee in Peshawar. My father was a refugee. He did his diploma there to become a doctor. And I'm a third-generation refugee, and it's just not fair, I left Afghanistan at the age of 13 because of the dark forces of not only the Taliban, but because of the US occupation. Alongside my brother, I had to take a hellish journey across half of the world to get here. It was very difficult, very challenging. I was unwelcomed almost everywhere I went through. They put me in prison, arrested me, deported me in a lot of cases between Bulgaria, Turkey, Iran. Made it to Greece on a boat designed for 20 to 30 people. There were 120 of us in there. Our boat was about to be capsized. I wish this was just history, but this is happening to people now, not just Afghans, but people from other parts of the world as well, Syrians, Iraqis, people from Somalia and Eritrea, South Sudan. And it's heartbreaking to see there are 80 million displaced people in the world. And Afghanistan and Afghans are the second largest refugee population, the second largest displacement in the world. So yeah, I go to the UK and I managed to arrive here and survive. And it took me a long time before I was able to overcome the hostility of the Home Office. My nationality was not believed, my age was disputed. It took me 5 years to get refugee status. It took me 14 years just to become citizen recently. And I've been campaigning and advocating for refugees' rights, not just Afghans, but everyone. And I just feel like we have a very inhumane asylum system. And what's happening in Afghanistan right now, this was preventable. We see these young people, we see judges, we see people who Afghanistan are leaving as a result of our policies. The UK and the US, NATO countries, action or inaction. I mean, as an Afghan, I never supported the US occupation of my country. My family was very, pro-Taliban and very conservative. But at the same time, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've realized there was a need for international forces to be in Afghanistan, to support the Afghan military, to support the Afghan. I mean, we were speaking earlier, the Afghans were given the opportunity to taste freedom and have hopes and aspirations, and then our rugs were full under our feet, and we were left to the wolves. I was hoping to go back and see my mother, whom I'm not seeing for the last 15 years, to see my loved ones, but I don't think I will be able to with the current situation. So I think the Taliban would not have been able to achieve what they have without the support of Pakistan, obviously, but also because of the US made a deal with them, a withdrawal agreement, and legitimized them and empowered them to do what they have done. The Afghan army lost morale. The government was obviously corrupt. There was a lot of challenges and issues, but it was much better than what it is now. Because right now, people, I see these young people writing to me on social media. They have lost hopes. They have lost their aspirations, and it's just heartbreaking to see. We saw the images in Kabul airport of people clinging on to planes where people lost their lives. They were dropping from the sky. 30 people died because of the stampede, the overcrowdedness of the place. 200 died because of the suicide bombing. And then when the US left, they did a drone attack and they killed 10 people of the same family. I mean, the US is mostly responsible for what is happening and what has happened in Afghanistan. I mean, I could go on and on, but I just feel like we need to be compassionate, we need to be kind, we need to welcome and find ways to welcome these judges who are stranded in Afghanistan, who are at great danger because of our actions or inactions. And we have empowered these judges. We helped and supported them. We give them that sense of freedom and hope. And now we are kind of, it's like, it's not our responsibility, and we are leaving them.
One of the saddest things you said to me before we came in was that your lovely little daughter, Zoha, she's here, your parents haven't seen her.
No.
And those are the small tragedies, that the grandparents haven't been able to see the child.
I got married, my family was not here. I would have loved for my mom to be here. My brother got married back home. My sister got married, I was not there. My grandmother, who was the most beloved to me, she passed away, I was not there. One of my little sister passed away. So there's occasions that happens, you want to be part of it, but as a refugee, you have to sacrifice these things. And then you have to explain to people why they should welcome you, why they should not be, unkind and hostile to you. Particularly, like the people are usually generous and kind, but it's the government with its policies of turning boats away in the channel and blaming us for the problems of the country, refugees and asylum seekers.
Well, I think, and the myth that this country's always been very kind and welcomed refugees, that is a myth. You talk to the people, the Jewish people who came here in their time, and they'll say the hostility was so extreme that they completely hid their identities for a whole generation. They named their children, gave their children English names, never said they were Jewish. So my lot came from Uganda in 1972, exactly 50 years ago next year. And the same thing, great hostility was whipped up by right-wing politicians. Now, Mr. Nigel Farage tells me personally, oh, we love people like you, refugees like you. You're hardworking. It's the others we don't want. And I said, actually, you hated us when we came. The reason why you caught us now is so many Ugandan nations became rich and became like Priti Patel. That's why you like us. But really, she has the same background as me. But it'll be interesting. This might give you hope that some of the newspapers that have been so hostile are actually talking about the Afghan refugees in the same way, saying, look, when the Ugandans came, they made a success of their lives and they, helped lift the country. And these Afghans will do the same. This is new. And I think it is because of what you said. There's a sense deep inside that we were responsible for this.
I mean, not only we have a moral responsibility, but we owe it to the Afghans. We shouldn't welcome refugees because they contribute. We should welcome them because it's the right thing to do, Yeah. And I'm not a burden on society.
And let them work. Allow them to work. So one of the most inhumane things is they can't work. We've got labour shortages, but they can't work.
And they have to live on £5 a day. And they have to survive on £5 a day.
But like I said, the strength is what we should also remember. I'll hand over to Jude now, and then we'll open up for questions before Mike gives us his poem.
Well, I have very little to contribute, except Maria and I decided we'd put on this emergency conversation. When we started planning Ripples of Hope, it was before COVID. And originally it was going to be in February. Had it been in February, we would have been having a conversation about Hong Kong. Then it was going to
Yes.
be in May. And if we were going to be having it in May, we would have been talking about the Uyghur crisis. We could still talk about all of those things, and we should. It happens that we finally couldn't put it on until September, and we have to talk about Afghanistan. And I just say that because, you know, there's always a frontier of terror happening somewhere, and often they're happening simultaneously. And it does depend, of course, on the nature of the crisis and what the press decide to give attention to and what they don't, and who your political allies are and who they're not. You know, and so the whole kind of navigation of the Uyghur issue in relationship to trading with China has been painful to observe, although it's, you know, more obvious now. But the other thing, you know, the ripples of hope idea is that you do something and you have to keep hope going through small actions, and that's what you're doing. And I believe, painful as it was to hear her say, I'm waiting to die, I'm waiting to be killed, which is what she ended with, if you remember, is that the fact that she had that thread via you to us is something. It is something. And we have to hold on to those ideas. But, you know, when I started the WOW Women of the World festivals, which are in lots of countries now, I had a great friend in Pakistan who was going to be doing it, and she was shot, she was killed, and we had to decide. And of course, you know, it's not been my life in danger. This is just watching people standing up for straightforward rights who will be assassinated in the hope that everybody else will be scared. Well, the women did it anyway in Pakistan. We have been doing WOWs there for the last 7 years. We did it in Somaliland, and a fatwa was taken out against me temporarily. I had to be taken out of the country, and then the imam here spoke to them there and said, you can't do that, and don't. So that was taken away again. But I have to say that the woman who created the whole WOW in Somaliland was not allowed to do it again. And it, you know, so I've watched women and men be, you know, brutally punished in ways that also affect their families and their society for just basically doing something that we can take for granted. And it was interesting, I don't know if you were here on Wednesday night to hear Hillary Clinton, but she said, when I saw Trump sign that Taliban agreement, I knew the game was up. It was only, like, that was it. There was nothing we could do, really. And, you know, the issue for me, since I live in a democratic society and I'm a white Western woman and I have so many rights already, is that it is up to us to force democracy to be as good as it possibly can be. Because the fact that Trump got in and then could do that and take with him a kind of a whole right-wing agenda, because what does he care whether women are educated in Afghanistan? Of course he doesn't care. You know, somehow that is something we can take responsibility for, making sure our own systems don't let other people down. And you know, so I can't contribute. And the one other thing I want to say is that when this happened, a mutual friend of ours, Daya Khan, rang me and said, is there anything you can do to help a particular judge get out of Afghanistan? And I was able, and I'm not name drop, well no, I'll name drop. I was able to ring Gordon Brown and Elena Kennedy and a few other people and go, anything you can do. And I wasn't responsible for making this happen, but anyway, she got out via Qatar. But all of us have something we can do. We're not all going to be sorting out Afghanistan, but you know, you can go with somebody else to knock on the door of a housing authority and get somebody sorted out. We've got things we can all do. And so, you know, I have very little to offer to the debate, except it is an example of the fact that everybody has to do something. Because if you're not hiding, waiting to be shot, then you've got enough breath in your body to make a change happen, and we've just got to.
Yes, and in our political situation at the moment, the kind of knee-jerk hatred of asylum seekers and refugees and migrants has become just a norm, and that is why I think it's the responsibility of good citizens in a good society to constantly take these people on, which all of us on this panel are doing. You have to. Otherwise, what's the point of being human? What is the point? And the other thing to say, and this breaks my heart when I'm saying it, but I think it does need to be said, even if as a question. Why is it that there is hardly, I think Malaysia might be the exception, maybe Indonesia, I don't know, but most majority Muslim nations, and particularly those which describe themselves as Islamic, are the most hideously inhumane regimes in the world at the moment. And one has to ask oneself, what is it that is happening to the Muslim world, that we were craving independence, quite rightly, and we now have Imran Khan, playboy of the Western world, saying women who are raped were not dressed properly. So, you know, we have a double challenge, those of us who are Muslim activists. We have to battle the outside forces and we have to battle the inside oppressors. And I don't know how people remain sane in this situation, but we do, and there are such strong people as we have on the panel. Can we have questions now? Anybody want to ask a question? If you have a question for anybody in particular, say so. Otherwise, I'll ask them. But yes.
Hi, my name's Teal. I'm studying international disaster management and humanitarian response at the University of Manchester. Gulwali, I've read your book and I thought it was fantastic. I've got my mum to read it as well. But I'm still 3 years away from finishing my course and then hoping to do internships, work in the humanitarian field. And until then, I was just wondering what you guys know about opportunities in Manchester where I can be helping more towards this situation with Afghanistan, with any other conflicts or crises, because I feel like I can share as many infographics on Instagram and sign as many petitions, but I feel like I can be doing more.
Oh, one of the new generation. Hooray. You're so good. You're so good, you young people. Any response?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think that's a great question, because usually when I do talks, I want people to do something, you know, go on demonstration, write to the MP, volunteer. So in Manchester, what you could do is, so Care for Calais has been collecting donations and supporting the Afghans arriving at the hotels. Manchester and Birmingham have the most people staying in the hotels, so they need volunteers, they need help with sorting out the donations. Manchester City of Sanctuary usually needs people to help them out with English classes, befriending, mentoring refugees and asylum seekers. There's some really good charities in Manchester, Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit, Manchester Refugee Network, and there's quite a few. So please, you know, volunteering with them as a befriender, as a mentoring refugees, helping them with donations. So yeah, these are things we can impact. And of course, signing petition, writing to our MPs, and if there's demonstration and protests, attending these. These are the little things that we could do, and we could all, you know, hopefully have an impact. And just being engaged and involved, being concerned about what's happening is the right way forward, and showing solidarity and compassion.
Marzia, would you like her to get involved in your campaign?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, if she wants, of course, yes. I want to have her details to be in touch with her. Yeah.
There you have.
If you like to join our campaign. Yeah, of course, yeah, you're most welcome.
Marriage made in heaven, this
Yeah.
one.
Practical help for women.
Any other questions? Yes, there's a young lady there.
Hi, I just want to first thank you for sharing your experiences. They are so, so important, and thank you. I was born in 2002. I've never known a world without the consequences of 9/11, and with having Britain and Afghanistan. I'm now of voting age, but I do not understand Afghanistan. I have still grown up in a world where Britain's been involved in it, but our schools don't teach it. And if it is, it's one PCHSE lesson, and it's taught by a PE teacher who does not want to be there. It's not what it should be. And I worry now that a lot of us are of voting age, and a lot of us are at the age where we can make change, but we're unfortunately still met with the issues of parents and peers who were older saying, oh, you weren't there, you wouldn't understand. And we understand that we weren't, but we want to know and we want to learn, so that now that it's still unfolding, we as adults can now help in the issues that happen. So my question would be, how do we get young people to understand that this is an issue? This isn't a historic issue, this is a now issue. This can be something that they can get involved with and help with.
Great question.
Could I answer that?
Of course.
Brilliant question. I think the arts have a massive way and a massive job to play in doing exactly what you're asking to do. Because while we stand in schools pointing fingers and say, isn't this really bad? And this is what's happened in the past. And we know the history that we are taught is mainly myth. So I think we need to approach it in what I call hoodwinking almost, whereby we introduce it through art, and the art creates the debate. And that's what I attempt to do with my work.
Can I just add, I think that's an important question, because I go to schools and I see these young people have very little understanding of what it means to be a refugee, what is an asylum seeker, other than what they hear in the news or from right-wing politicians. And I think the system, the education doesn't teach about the British Empire, colonialism, and the role that Britain played in the world, not just now, but in the past. And I think there are great books and stories and plays and things that if people are interested, they could find out about Afghanistan. But I think, yes, the education system certainly should be doing more in educating young people about global injustices and why we should care as citizens. We need to be, as Yasmin was saying, we should be, good people should care about the suffering of our fellow human beings. So one of the way we could do that is to pressure to have an education system, schools, universities, and colleges, which prepares us to be kind, compassionate human beings, and to care and be concerned for people who are suffering. So what's happening in China with the Uyghur Muslim, what's happening in Burma with the Rohingyas, what's happening elsewhere in the world, we should find out and we should care. So what has been happening in Afghanistan, there are 35 million to 40 million Afghans, and we left them in a situation where they lost everything overnight. And the UK seems to think they don't have a responsibility. So if Afghans comes across the channel, they will not only not be granted asylum, they will be penalized and criminalized for coming here irregularly, which they may not have any other options. The UK wants people to wait, but as we heard from the judge, you're waiting to die. So some people will take this desperate means to travel, undocumented, so-called illegally, irregularly. They may not have any other options. Claiming asylum is a human right, but the UK government has criminalized people. I mean, it took me 5 years to get the Home Office to accept me that I was a genuine refugee. It took them 2-3 years to accept that I was an Afghan national. I was 15 by the time. So yes, all these things, I feel like young people are a lot more internationalist compared to the older generation, and I feel we need to find ways to engage. And I think social media and the internet helps. Like there's dozens of information. If you Google Afghanistan, if you go on YouTube, you could find things out. But definitely getting involved with the local community and getting to know people, having that conversation and coming to this kind of events, yeah.
But also, I think it's really important to get the backstory. Okay? So this idea of Tony Blair standing up and saying, I was right. I wrote a column 2 weeks ago saying, did you know, okay, put your hands up, if you knew that more drones were used by Barack Obama in Afghanistan in his first year than were used by George Bush throughout his time in office. Yeah. Did you know that? Yeah. And why aren't we talking about that? Okay, so Barack Obama, who's a great leader, had the blind spot about Afghanistan and about Syria. There are no wholly good people. And the backstory is really important. How did we get into Afghanistan this time? What were we told about what was going on? I supported it. And then I've now thought about, how did I support this thing? Because of what I was told then, and I have to rethink. So on Monday, I'm talking to a school to give them the backstory, because the school wants their children, their students, to know how we got there in the first place, which I think is fantastic. That, they want to do that.
I was going to say that all through one's life, you come across these moments when people say to you, well, that's an impossible situation. They're all crazy in that place, or you can't solve it. So they said about Northern Ireland,
They said it about South Africa. They say it, we say these things when we mean we can't be bothered to understand the systemic reasons why a group of people who are just like us are forced to live dysfunctionally for so long that they carry on with the dysfunctionalness because there's no system put back in place that would allow peace to kind of take hold. And so whenever you hear people say, well, it's insoluble, you can be guaranteed that what they mean is we haven't faced up to the consequences of a story of the past.
Yeah.
And when people get like, oh, we don't want all that reparation stuff, it's actually because they will not go to the roots of the mental health problem, if we just put it that way for a second. Instead of sort of saying, well, you can't solve that because they're crazy. You're not allowed to say that about mental health anymore. There are reasons, but neurological reasons and lived experience reasons, and we have to be prepared. So what you're really saying is, how do you educate yourself? Because you can't rely on anybody else to do it, I'm afraid.
And it's really important. And even when it comes to sometimes the most difficult things, like, this young boy who put the bomb in the arena. We've all grown to hate him, and he's been turned into a monster. But I wrote about his life and how he grew up, and his parents, and his father in particular. What the two brothers were subjected to was they couldn't have been anything other than these killing machines. So the mental side of things is really, and what the people of Afghanistan, Syrian, the crises in their heads, nobody's talking about. But let's have the poem now, if we may. Unless there are, oh, sorry.
I've recently watched a programme about the Vietnam War, and I lived through it. That was the first media war that was totally lied about through the media. Yeah. So through my lifetime, I just feel it's been one lie after another about war and fighting. And, we're now bombarded with information on the media, and we don't know. I don't know what's true and what isn't. What you said about Obama, I did know about that. But I think, the question I suppose I'd like to ask was, when was the last time there was peace in Afghanistan? Because I can't remember. We seem to have all this stuff all the time about it. And also, one thing that I don't get is why globally all the countries don't come together when there's a war situation, rather than it's just the US and Russia. Actually, there's an involvement of Russia and, the bigger countries behind it all, but we only get little bits of that because it could become a much bigger thing. And I just think, what the hell is going on? What are these people that are there to make decisions actually doing?
Marzia,
and how
do you
can
think,
we change that? How can we
but I think one of the things that, in the bigger picture, you're absolutely right. But over the last 20 years, a lot did change at one level for the people of Afghanistan because of education, and mainly through the NGO sector, not through government. But the NGO sector did amazing work with the, am I right?
Yeah, you're right, yeah. And I left Afghanistan at the age of 44, at a very old age. When I arrived in this country, I cannot speak a word of English. So when I arrived, because I worked as a director of an NGO, of course I had a staff and things. We have a very strong group of NGOs we called Together Stronger, and this is a global group. All the women activists, Afghan women activists probably, is part of this group. And these people, they left Afghanistan already. They living in the camps in America, but they start to put money again back to Afghanistan. This is the job women did and women is doing for Afghanistan, especially NGOs. When the money came to the government, just they made good buildings, houses, and they send their families to US, to London for education. But the NGOs, and especially women, they work very hard, And also they paid the high price too.
Any other final question? Yes. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Okay, I can be heard. Thank you. Just a very simple question, but I'm not sure if the response is simple. In listening to the Qazi's friend that we heard from at the beginning, and thinking about somewhat of a welcome response to the refugees that we've just had over recently, the ones that came over on the planes, the ones that are in the hotels, if the Qazi's friend will manage to somehow escape and potentially end up in the UK, would the response to her from the state here be different to the ones that have just come through?
Yes, unfortunately.
In what way?
So if she come here irregularly, she will be penalized for coming here. So the UK there's a borders bill going through now, a nationality bill through Priti Patel have this bill where she wants to imprison people for up to 4 years for coming here irregularly, even though that's breaking international law, breaking the UN Convention on Refugees, humanitarian laws. The law does not say you have to stay in the first safe country. The law does not say that you can't travel somewhere illegally or undocumented. So the people who came to evacuation, they will hopefully be granted indefinite leave to remain. There's a two-tier system now. So if you come here through resettlement, which didn't exist before, now the government have a resettlement program. We don't know much of the details. You can't really apply for it. You have to be selected somehow by the UNHCR, and the UNHCR is pretty ineffective in doing so. I mean, if people come here by their own means somehow, they will not be treated in the same way that if the people come here through resettlement or through, if they were evacuated, if they were lucky ones. So it's not people's fault. I mean, some people got fortunate, they were able to be evacuated. Most people didn't have the opportunity. So that's why we need to challenge this border bill. And sadly, it's going to pass because of the Conservative majority in the House of Commons. And there's 8 things. You will limit family reunification. You will basically send refugees anywhere. Whomever country will have them. Even though if somebody is genuine refugee, the Home Office will grant them temporary status pending removal. And they want to have detention centers in other countries. They want to have foreign camps in detention because the UK have this mentality. They want refugees to go anywhere but here. You know, like, I just don't get it. Why should the French, the Italian, the Greece, the German, who takes a lot more refugees than we do, should take the burden? Like, so, yes, it's very concerning. It's really a worrying situation to see, especially the warm welcome narrative, like, oh, Afghans are welcome. But then at the same time, if Afghans are arriving across the channel, they will be treated very differently. They will be in limbo for years and years to get their status.
So one last word from me. When Ugandan Asians were coming here, and we weren't refugees, we had inferior British passports with the letter D stamped on them, which meant that we had the passports, but we had no right to come to the country of which we had the passport. Extraordinary. And the government then tried to palm us off. Australia, please, will you take them? Canada, will you take some? Well, you know, I think they even went to Papua New Guinea. Take a few of these people. When everybody said no, we were not even refugees, we were British. So, and I want to publicly apologize for Priti Patel.
It's not your fault, but okay, thank you.
No, she and I have the same background. Her family could not have come here if somebody like her had been in charge. We had a decent Conservative government in the end. Ted Heath actually did the honourable thing. So I want to say I really am sorry for what this woman is doing to refugees from Afghanistan and elsewhere. Really, I feel such shame about that. The poem.
Wonderful. I feel quite humbled and honoured sat between these two people whose experiences we cannot imagine. But at the same time, it has always been an issue for me, and with a brother-in-law from Aleppo who was still working on getting their family out of on a daily basis, with a mother who did jumble sales for Virage Mendes in Hume in the 80s and 90s. And as Irish immigrants, we understand what it's like. I was to write a poem. I'm an educationalist. I work in schools. The first question I ask kids when I walk into a classroom is, put your hand up if you're brilliant. The second question is, put your hand up if your parents or grandparents came from another country. And usually the room is pretty much 90%, except for the ginger boy with freckles in the corner, and I go, Murphy? And I say, thank you. Thanks for coming. And two things that's come out of today is two really interesting oxymorons. One is the hostility of the Home Office. The other is Priti Patel. I was asked to write a poem about one of the UN conventions, and I chose education, the right to education, because it's the way out for so many people. So many people. And I saw a news report, and a small kid, he must have been about 13, he said he was in Yemen, and all the Gurning was doing what all the Gurning does, reporting war zones. And this small child at the end of the interview said, but the future of our nation rests upon our shoulders. And I'm rubbish at titles, so I nicked his words. I was going to call it Rubber Souls, but then I thought his title was better. The future of our nation rests upon our shoulders. All the hands have been removed from all the clocks in all the schools in Yemen by Hutu rebels claiming the clocks are spies, tick-tocking telltale toll truths to tutors and students, and pointing out with a pinpoint accuracy the position of every landmine in the playground. Rebel leaders maintain that this can be the only reason why, despite increased airstrikes, the shelling of school buses and snipers placed on peacetime, the children continue to attend, undeterred. Smiling, singing and scribing alphabets in their wall-less classrooms, or tossing pebbles skywards and skipping the ultimate game of hopscotch during morning play. Their flip-flopping feet landing louder than bombs. Thank you.
Thank you to you all, and really it was one of the most moving things I've ever witnessed, so thank you. And thanks to the audience for being here, for being supportive and asking such very good questions. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.